Teremos agora a abertura oficial deste.
We will now have the official opening of the forum. And for this purpose, the president of, well, we actually have Sergio Gusmão Suchodolski, president of ABDE and BDMG, as well as the president of the Assembly of ABDE and BNDES, Gustavo Montezano. And so for the official welcome, we'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sergio Gusmão. Thank you, Adalgisa. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would initially like to greet President Gustavo Montezano, president of the Administration Council of ABDE and president of BNDES. It is a very serious moment in our history with the pandemic, technological disruption, and climate emergencies. But at the same time, it's a pleasure to begin open our sixth edition of our forum promoted by the Brazilian Association of Development. In organizing the forum, our main commitment is to stimulate thinking about future agendas and promote initiatives and find paths that will lead us to sustainable development of Brazil and our partners around the world. With this purpose, we have built this forum, which I am sure will become a unique space and forum for this kind of discussion. Along the next 5 days, we will bring together development players and of the development national system of the national government and subnational governments, international organizations, also representatives of civil society and several experts. I would like to reaffirm to all of you who are watching that the concern over the future of development is not a recent agenda for a BDE. For the 52 years ago, ABDE was founded in Minas Gerais, and we have celebrated a 52nd anniversary. And so with the purpose of bringing reflection to the public agenda, ABDE is active in all regions of Brazil with 31 associates, among which development agencies, cooperative banks and others, as well as FINEP and SEBRAE. So these institutions comprise the national system of development, responsible for 46% of the credit market in Brazil, with support to important sectors for the national development that are not always the main focus of the financial system. Among the strategic areas that are financed, I'd like to point out two that are fundamentally important, especially in the times we are experiencing. First, credit to municipalities. The national system of development represents 99.5% of total financing. In addition to this significant share, subnational institutions such as state development banks and development agencies are very important in funding municipalities, especially the smallest ones with the lowest HDIs, and as well as on topics related to climate change by funding adaptation and mitigation projects. Secondly, credit for micro, small and medium-sized companies. In this segment, the system has been leading the anti-cyclical response to the effects of the pandemic, operating the main instruments of main warranty instruments, allowing access to resources by small companies. And the commitment with this segment is reflected in portfolios with over 60% of participation of micro, small and medium-sized economies. In spite of the shrinking of the economy, the system has achieved important results last year, which reinforces its great importance for the economy of the country. And so the credit portfolios of the system have grown 11.3% between January and December 2020, representing an increase of 186 billion reais. And these drivers of action are very important in the current context of challenges, but they do not fully reveal the fundamental role of financial development institutions. The big distinction for this segment is to think about the future, and the development financial institutions have been looking at the long term through credit and actions leading to sustainable development of our country. The development financial institutions, they guarantee that the future will come about for the whole of Brazilian society tomorrow. So the forum is an opportunity for us to look beyond the current moment, discussing perspectives and horizons for economic recovery, supporting a new development agenda for Brazil. And so in the initial decades of the 21st century, the development system has a key role in face of the challenges of climate change and increasing social demands for social and economic inclusion, as well as promotion of diversity. This process is in line with ambitious targets and goals agreed globally under the 2030 agenda of sustainable developments of the UN. And so this is once again about taking on a commitment to become a transformation driver and reorienting investments towards more inclusive and sustainable development. The Brazilian Association of Development and its members play a leading role in helping Brazil to fulfill sustainable development goals, the SDGs of the 2030 agenda, which is led by the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who will join us later on today. And so the development system has several products to stimulate sustainable projects, adding resources and expanding the funding capacity, which means longer deadlines, lower rates, more flexible guarantees, among other relevant aspects, always with a focus on clean energy, energetic efficiency, efficient transport, and other sustainable development topics. It's important to remind you that in a recent OECD study, it was estimated that 65% of the 169 targets of the SDGs will not be met without appropriate engagement and coordination with local and regional governments. In this sense, the development financial institutions brought together under ABDE play a key role. They know closely the local realities, and they have the necessary expertise to mobilize public and private capitals and information in designing scenarios that are aligned with the SDGs. In this sense, ABDE has been entering several strategic partnerships with a view to aligning the country to the 17 SDGs and its 169 targets, as well as orienting its actions towards international cooperation in the next 10 years. We might mention agreements with the UNDP, with the IDB, the German International Cooperation Agency, GIZ, and as well as AFD, as well as CAF, the Latin American Development Bank, and also the Laboratory on Financial Innovation created with in partnership with other organizations. And so this financial innovation laboratory, bringing together representatives of the government and civil society, is aimed at promoting sustainable financing or funding in Brazil. Through these partnerships, since 2014, more than 2 million reais have been invested in training, actions, seminars and webinars, studies and development of several innovative pilot projects. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the scenario resulting from the pandemic reinforced the need to accelerate the global agenda for the funding of sustainable projects. We can and should plan and build more resilient economies and more inclusive economies for our country. We are facing an opportunity to relaunch Brazilian economy through investments that are aligned with green development and that are intelligent and fair. I am pleased to state that ABDE and the National Development System are fully committed with this agenda to guarantee that the future will come about for the whole of Brazilian society, and that Brazil might, through its development in financial institutions, give its contribution towards a more sustainable world. And so you are all very welcome to the 6th Forum on Development of ABDE. I wish you all a great debate and fruitful debate, and I hope that we can build together the paths towards the resumption of sustainable development in Brazil, as well as cooperate with our partners from all regions in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, President of the ABDES, Sergio Gusmão. Now we'll hear from the President of the BNDES, Mr. Gustavo Montezano. Thank you, Adalgisa. Good morning, Sergio. On your behalf, I'd like to greet all of the participants and members of the ABDE. Thank you for inviting BNDES for being a part of this opening ceremony of the Forum of Development that will take place for the week. My initial words, I'd like to sum up our position in terms of strategy in the BNDES looking forward, trying to stimulate debates, and many of these strategies that we have put forth might be useful for the participants. So we would like to really give ideas to the participants of the national development system. And as Sergio said, the crisis that we're going through has brought a lot of pain. It's a very harsh moment, very difficult both in the professional and personal levels. On the other hand, this moment has also brought about a lot of awareness and a lot of innovation. We have learned a lot along this throughout this painful experience, and we've also managed to see things that were quite obvious, but we didn't manage to see in the past. And the world is repositioning itself, and society is rethinking itself. So public banks should bring these reflections to its strategies as well, and as ways of adding value to society. And in this sense, what we have been trying to incorporate in the BNDES is to be more multidimensional in our activities, diversify our portfolios. Of course, credit is important, funding is important, but these are not the only pillars. It is important to complement these with other instruments, other ways of acting, and especially the assessment of our activities as public banks shouldn't be fully connected to the assessment of a private bank or compared to a private bank that aims for profit and disbursements. The question is, how can we do that? And what is the impact, the social impact of our actions? What is the environmental impact of our actions? Obviously, without losing sight of the financial sustainability of the institutions. So with that, I introduced the first pillar of our strategy looking forward, also mentioned by the president of the association, which is the focus on SMEs. When we look at the portfolios, we do not necessarily look at the size of the borrowing and lending, and but who are we providing credit for? And the strategy is not for big companies, it's for small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs. So we've always known that, but the crisis has shown very clearly that the focus on this layer of the economic activity is fundamental, and BNDES has had last year a historical, a landmark activity with SME, being it with credit programs or government programs with card and machines. And we've reached almost 10 million companies, 10 million 135 million reais for this layer of our economic fabric. So looking forward, as important as the size of our balance sheet is how much we are dedicating to these customers at this SMEs layer. This is our focus. This is where we can make the most social impact in our actions. So moving on to the second pillar of our strategy, we should address guarantees. We only managed to have such a deep activity with such a capillarity because we have diversified our tools. We have acted by guaranteeing operations and making investments in investment funds for prediction funds, and with FDICs, as we call them in Brazil. And with that, we are diversifying our portfolios to reach this other layer of our economic fabric and manage to be more efficient. And this can only be done with partnerships. The capillarity, reaching the outskirts, is fundamental. And I should stress the point that we have guaranteed an operation in agribusiness that opens another front of activity for us to work with the capital market funding small enterprises. So looking for new sources and new instruments for this segment is one of our main strategies. The BNDES will remain a neutral bank in its actions with SMEs. So the more money we have at the edges, at the ends of the lines, and more relevant will be our work. So first pillar, SMEs, second pillar, guarantees. The third pillar that we consider fundamental in our activities is our project factory. That means the BNDES providing service to customers as the federal government and the states as customers to make our activities in the bank more prominent. We have almost 200 professionals working in this activity. We have over 120 products. CAPEX is 220 billion, and this has shown the demand from our customers, federal government, for this consultancy in projects. We're not lending any money. We are lending expertise. We are providing financial, environmental engineering, and the stability that a bank like us have to conduct these projects in governments. Our bottleneck is not having installed capacity within the bank to take on new projects, given the huge demand we are servicing. And the concrete results are there to show. Last year, we have had sanitation projects in Alagoas, the Brasilia energy company with the privatization, now the privatization of the electricity company of Rio Grande do Sul. And if everything goes right, we'll have an auction, a big auction in Rio de Janeiro as well. And we see with very good eyes this strategy. This is not a government strategy. We are confident that this is a state strategy, the capacity to model projects and regulate operations, to invest in time and financial resources in the structuring of these projects generates a lot of value to the public sector. The BNDES has no capillarity and arms to perform on local projects in the state. So here we see a great opportunity for the regional development banks. The fourth pillar of our strategy is co-funding and unionization. We are not here to fight for market share. Quite the opposite. The more borrowers we have and the more resources we have in the projects and clients we work with, the bigger our success is. In addition to the borrowers bringing capital and appetite to risk to operate the projects, they bring knowledge, diversity of opinions, governance. So in our top structure with co-funding and unionization is a fundamental pillar of our success. We are not fighting for market share. The more local, international, public, private banks we have co-funding our infrastructural projects, the better our resilience and quality of the project will be. And we are the big elephant in the room of Brazilian infrastructure, and it's up to us to give up space for this market to arise. So we have the project financing strict sense where we do not need specificity for banks to fund projects. This is a very powerful tool for the development of national infrastructure. We're not inventing the wheel. We've seen this in Chile, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, United States, emerging markets, developed countries. They have been doing this for a long time. So we need to develop market or effective risk project in Brazil and diversify our portfolios so as to make our portfolios more resilient, because we'll have diversified actions with or it will not have concentrated corporate evaluations. And the fifth pillar is the social environmental pillar. In addition to our very important activity in development, we could see a huge appetite of private companies and operators to also conduct environmental and social actions to neutralize the risks and exposures they face in their own activities. And we, as development institutions, we have knowledge and we can leverage and support these agents in the fulfilling of their social environmental targets. This is an activity we started to focus on starting on the second semester of last year, which BNDES, in partnership with financial private institutions, supported agents in making these operations that were concentrated in philanthropic institutions and other parts of the government. And we could notice a very strong and relevant social impact. And we, as public institutions, in addition to supporting them with the project building and the national coordination, we can co-invest, participate, and bring more security and safety, and potentialize or increase the impact of actions that were not, of agents that were not as representative as in the past. So this is going pretty well, and it's accelerating fast. So in summary, we talked about SMEs, we talked about guarantees, we talked about our project factory, unionization and co-funding, and lastly, social environmental impact. So with these 5 pillars, we are pushing for the BNDES strategy into the future. Thank you very much. I hope a great week of debates.